Our next feature, 1885, with the initiative of Alan Octavian Hume, and it became the chief organization representing the will of the common people and led the Indians in their struggle for freedom. But what was the reaction of the English to the formation of this organization? Let's find out in this feature, Official Attitude Towards Congress from 1885 to 1905. This is an elective course in history and the course code is EHI 1, Block 2.
1885 was the year when the Congress was born. The first session of the Indian National Congress was held at Bombay in December 1885.
Indeed, it was a rare occasion, as 72 delegates from various parts of the country met together to chalk out a common program of political action. W.C. Banerjee, presiding over this session, commented,
"Never before had so important and comprehensive an assemblage occurred within historical times on the soil of India."
The Congress session expressed loyalty to the Crown and the British rule. The delegates had firm faith in the fair play and justice of the British. Little did they know that by forming this organization, they had laid the foundation of the mightiest challenge which the British were to face in India in the years to come.
But how did the British react to this formation? Did they encourage it? What was their attitude towards the Congress in its formative years? Did this attitude remain consistent? These are some crucial questions which come to our mind, particularly in the light of various theories propounded in relation to the origin of the Congress.
These theories move around the hypothesis: first, Congress as a safety valve for the British rule against the growing process of disintegration generated by the actions of the British. Second, Sir A.O. Hume, a retired British civil servant, taking the initiative out of the Indians' hands by organizing a loyal political organization in the form of Congress, as an organization of upper-class people to fight for their own demands. And third, a genuine effort by prominent Indians to look after the interests of India and the Indian people as a whole.
Each of these theories have arguments in their favor and against the other, and the debate becomes more interesting in relation to the official attitude towards the Congress. Well, we can divide the official attitude towards Congress into three phases: one of encouragement, the other of guarded opposition and aloofness, and the third of open hostility.
There is no doubt that the Viceroy Lord Dufferin had encouraged Hume in taking the initiative to launch a political organization which performed the same functions that Her Majesty's opposition did in England. And yet, at the same time, Dufferin was aware that the functions of such an assembly must of necessity consist in criticizing the acts of policy of the government and formulating demands which probably it would be impossible to grant.
But even then, he did not oppose Hume's idea being put into practice. He only cautioned Lord Ray, the governor of Bombay, not to accept the chairmanship of this political organization. Though no government servant was to be a part of the Congress, Dufferin invited the Congress delegates to a garden party during the Calcutta session of 1886. But here again, Dufferin told his guests that they had been invited not as Congress delegates, but as distinguished visitors to the capital. But the question is, why was Dufferin adopting a policy of guarded distance and appeasement at the same time?
Well, the fear of an 1857 type of uprising had always hounded the British. Thus, if educated Indians could channelize the prevailing discontent into a constitutional moderate approach, the British thought they had nothing to fear. Moreover, this was a period when Russia was attempting to advance in Afghanistan. This could have threatened the British Empire in India, and in such a situation, the British could not afford internal disorder.
From the Congress platform came the assurances of loyalty to the Crown and praise of the benefits which British rule had bestowed on India. While in the first session, W.C. Banerjee in his presidential address declared that there were no more thoroughly loyal and consistent well-wishers of the British government than were himself and the friends around him. Similarly, in the next session, Dadabhai Nauroji declared, "Let us speak out like men and proclaim that we are loyal to the backbone."
But in spite of these voices of loyalty, the official attitude was now hardening towards the Congress. Dufferin now regarded it as a microscopic minority, meaning thereby that it was an organization of a handful of people and did not represent the Indians as such.
There were no more garden parties. On the contrary, there were cases when people were called upon to give sureties to maintain peace if they participated in Congress sessions. The government put in all kinds of obstacles in providing a venue for the Allahabad Congress in 1888. The reception committee had to make private arrangements for the site. Dufferin wrote to Sir Auckland Colwyn, the then Lieutenant Governor of UP, about Hume, "You have treated this silly impostor with too much courtesy."
Not only this, but the government was now bent upon encouraging anti-Congress feelings amongst the landlords and Muslims. Their efforts proved successful when Raja Shio Prasad Singh of Banaras and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan campaigned against the Congress with the tacit support of the government. But why was the government so hostile to the Congress?
Many reasons can be attributed to this hostile posture. Firstly, the government looked upon with disfavor to the increasing demands of the Congress, particularly demands like reduction in military expenditure, repeal of Arms Act, etc. Secondly, the government also did not like the Congress efforts to mobilize and influence public opinion in England. The Congress had been regularly attempting to influence that section of the British electorate which tendered support to socialist ideas. Thirdly, the British government was now afraid that the National Congress was aligning itself and appealing to a particular party in England, and the Indian issue was becoming a debatable matter in England.
But the crucial factor that contributed heavily in inviting the British government's hostility to the Congress was the efforts of radical congressmen to seek mass support for their demands. In the 1887 Congress session at Madras, 2 pamphlets were distributed. One, a Tamil Congress catechism penned by Veera Raghavacharya of Madras. This pamphlet talked of the relationship between the home government and the English people on the one hand and Government of India and the Indian people on the other. It made a comparison between the two. More than 30,000 copies of this pamphlet were sold in South India. The second pamphlet was in Hindi, entitled A Conversation Between Maulvi Farooquddin and one Ram Baksh of Kambaktpur. In this were mentioned the evils of absentee state landlordism. This alarmed the government. The pamphlets were regarded seditious. Confidential inquiries were made to gather awareness about the social complexion of the Congress. General Chesney believed that the real wire pullers were sitting behind the scenes, and those who had been at the helm of affairs were merely put forward to give the Congress an air of respectability. Chesney reported,
"There is to be a system of village-to-village preaching of the doctrines that the Congress is to be the remedy for all grievances."
Though as yet no such attempts had been made by the Congress, the very idea had alarmed the government.
Perhaps this had prompted Dufferin to write home that the Congress was likely to prove a mischievous organization. Dufferin's successor, Lord Lansdowne, more or less followed the same policy towards Congress which had been followed by Dufferin towards the end of his reign. Lansdowne believed that there was no harm in strengthening the hands of the moderates within the Congress, but the extremist views were to be discouraged. Another policy he pursued was to demonstrate the readiness of the government for gradual development. He accused the Congress of projecting every concession as a result of its agitation. And now, by showing the government's willingness towards reform, he could leave the Congress behind.
The government was always suspicious, in spite of the views of loyalty expressed within the Congress. Most of the time, the government drew parallels between the Congress and the Home Rule movement in Ireland. Though Lord Elgin also followed the same policy, he did not agree with the view that the Congress be declared an unlawful organization.
It was Lord Curzon, a staunch imperialist, who as Viceroy took on his shoulders the responsibility to crush the Congress. Anand Mohan Ghosh, the president of the Madras Congress session of 1898, had welcomed the appointment of Lord Curzon as the Viceroy. But in November 1900, Curzon wrote to the Secretary of State, Hamilton, "The Congress is tottering to its fall, and one of my greatest ambitions while in India is to assist it to a peaceful demise."
But could Curzon do so? No. Though he tried his best, along with Hamilton, to counteract the activities of congressmen. Hamilton told Curzon,
Firstly, to ascertain the names of Indian princes and noblemen who subscribed to Congress funds. Secondly, these people were to be told that the government was aware of this and looked upon it with disfavor. Thirdly, to bestow honors and distinctions to persons who were not congressmen. And finally, to tighten government control over higher education.
Not only these suggestions of Hamilton were put into practice, but Curzon evolved his own methods to deal with the Congress. These included 1. Never to take notice of Congress. 2. Not to have any kind of relationship with Congress leaders. 3. Take the initiative to introduce reasonable reforms so that the Congress leadership will be deprived from representing public complaints. Curzon's actions also included the passing of the Universities Act and curbs on the press. However, it was Curzon's move to partition Bengal that marked a turning point in the British attitude and the role of Congress. Bengal at that time was the nerve center for propagating nationalist ideas. As one English official had commented,
Bengal united is a power. Bengal divided will pull in several different ways.
And Bengal was partitioned into 2 provinces in 1905. Though the official claim was that it had been done for administrative purposes, the real motive was to divide the Hindus and Muslims. Curzon could not foresee that this action, instead of crushing the Congress and the nationalist feelings, would give encouragement to them. With this, the Congress entered into a new phase. That was the phase of challenging the British with mass support.
Thus we see the British attitude to Congress from 1885 to 1905 changed gradually from encouragement to hostility. One of the main reasons for this was the change in the strategy of the Congress from being a loyalist organization to being an organization seeking mass support. Dufferin's Garden Party in 1886 and the mass agitation against the partition of Bengal in 1905 were 2 events illustrative of this changeover.
That was the feature on the official attitude towards Congress from 1885 to 1905. The participants